Good day, my name is Jaco Kruger. I am a tax practitioner that specializes around claiming the disability expenses for taxpayers and taxpayers with dependents with special needs or a combination sometimes of the two to claim those legitimate costs from SARS and then to create a tax refund for them. The purpose of this video recording is also to create awareness amongst taxpayers and parents. In this presentation, I would like to go through our content. There's an introduction section that will just talk a little bit about my background and why I do what I do. We will look at some of the requirements from SARS and the important notes on how to go about claiming your legitimate costs. We will look at the ITRDD form, which is your form that states the diagnosis of a person, which is very important. We will also look at some SARS guidelines in terms of claimable expenses and categories, etc. We will also look at our process that we follow in terms of assisting our clients to claim their legitimate costs, and we will also leave you with some contact details. All right, introduction side of things. We are parents of a 27-year-old special needs son in our house that stays with us now on a permanent basis. He was diagnosed when he was 8 years old, has been autistic and ADHD. We invested in this person's life since of early ages, and he's now an adult of 27, as I said, that works at a employer. He's also got a gentleman with a nice handicap. A lot of his tactile dysfunctions and hyperactivities all disappeared. And the reason I mention this is because we've invested our life into this child, and he turned out now to be an amazing person. At the age of 27, and was very independent, good-mannered. None of those other conditions that we had early on is still with him at this point. Because of him, I decided a couple of years ago to try and make a difference in people's lives, and hence I decided to start this practice to help people out there because the need was so great. And due to my personal experience, I have an invested interest in this business. To me, what I do is a service, but also there's a personal connection to this. That's why I always make mention of the difference between sympathy and empathy, which the latter one is what it's all about. So the main objective of what we do here is to supply the financial relief to help parents and taxpayers to improve a particular person with special needs quality of life, but also maintain it as we go through. Because 99.9% of these cases are permanent disabilities, and we need to look ahead for the quality of life of that person going forward. Some important notes that we need to discuss. First of all, we need to see and determine who is the taxpayer, who does pay taxes to the South African Revenue Service, because your cost that you'll be claiming and your tax refund as such that you'll be getting back from the Revenue Service will be coming from people that pay taxes. People that don't pay taxes to SARS, their costs that they have and for whatever other income they have can't be recovered. Very important note also is it has to be consequence of this disability. In other words, in their direct relationship to the disability and not paid by the medical aid. Those are your criteria for claiming your costs. Another important fact is that we always look at who incurred the cost. So in other words, for example, where the husband will pay for the medical contributions and medication side of things, the spouse, she might take the child to school, pay for therapy costs and those sort of things, and then we will claim the cost from the taxpayer that incurred the cost. So we will claim her cost from her side, and we will claim from the husband the medical contributions and the medication side from his tax return. One can go and recover up to 3 years, and that is allowed if the date of diagnosis on the ITRDD form allows it. If that date allows you to go back 3 years, then you're allowed to go back for that period and correct your legitimate cost and claim from the Revenue Service. Now, the refundable amount, in theory, is a result of 33.3% of a portion of your medical contributions. There's a bit of a formula there. Plus your disability cost and out-of-pocket medical expense for other members of the family. All those things together times that 33.3% is what in tax terms is called additional medical tax credit or AMTC, and that is normally equal to your tax refund. Then the ITDD form needs to be completed and signed off by the appropriate medical specialist, not a general practitioner. There are some guidelines on the top of page 3 on the right top to explain a little bit or guide people in terms of what person can sign off which areas of disability. They're not specific, it's not all of them. And you get nowadays specialists in a lot of areas that can sign off certain specific disabilities, especially around the autistic spectrum. And as I say, it must just be a person qualified to express an opinion to sign off that form. All right, let's talk about the ITRBD form. Page 1 there, this page must be completed by the person that is diagnosed with disability. All the details must be completed there. Page 2 is for the person claiming the expenses, the taxpayer. In some cases, that could be the same as page 1. For example, if you have a quadriplegic person and he's also a taxpayer, then ultimately he will complete page 1 because he is the person with disability. And page 2, he will just date and sign because he's also the taxpayer. He doesn't have to complete his details again. Page 3 to 4 is where the area of disability is identified and marked. For example, if it's a visual, physical or whatever area of disability is, that will be marked. There will also be a date of diagnosis put just below that category that is marked. That is also very important to indicate the source for that specific disability area when the disability starts. Page 5 is the page where the degree of disability is noted, and there are blocks to be completed for either mild or moderate to severe. Where it is marked as moderate to severe, then a full description of the disability must be disclosed below. The date of termination must also then be completed on this page, and that is specifically the date on when the patient or the person was diagnosed. That date must agree to any of the page 3 and 4s where there was a date of diagnosis. This page must also have a date of consultation and must contain a practice stamp just below on the page they're provided for. This date of consultation will then indicate to us that this form is valid for a period of 10 years, where after that period expires, one will have to renew the form. Then page 6, which is the last page, is purely for the particulars of that medical practitioner or specialist. Right, then some SARS guidelines. Let's talk about how this process works. You can also refer to the SARS guide, which is the LAPD ITGO7 issue 11 now, which is effective as from the 1st of March this year. Basically, there are 6 areas defined by SARS, which is your hearing, vision, physical, your intellectual, speech, and mental. Now, for each of these areas, there are 9 defined categories wherever applicable. And those form the list of qualifying expenses, which is so approved and signed off by our commissioner. Let's look at these categories in a minute. Primary care is your first one. Those are for your nurses, your trained care attendants. And for those type of people, we include the salary costs, training, living in costs, agencies that provide such services, etc. It does exclude family members and also the living in cost of such a person staying with a disability. Like, for example, in our scenario, my son at stage of all these expenses that we have to pay for is not allowed at this stage. The second category talks about travel and other related expenses. This travel is all travel related costs to and from any of those service providers, such as your therapy, medication, your specialists and doctors. And again, as I mentioned there, it must be consequence of disability. Now for travel, you do have the scenario of is twofold. There's 2 things that one came from. You have a service provider. For them, you will need an invoice and a proof of payment where they will take your child to all these service providers and bring the person home. But it can also be the use of your private vehicle and a combination sometimes of the two. For the use of the private vehicle, one has to complete a logbook with specific details. It's a daily logbook with some additional documentation to support those calculations. But as I said, it can be a combination of the two. You could have a dad taking the son to school in the morning, for example, and then in the afternoon after school, you'll have a service provider bringing the child home. So it can be a combination of the two methods. Please note that on school travel, the new law now in place, SARS will now allow only the excess of 10 kilometers from your home premises. Previously, it used to be 10 kilometers from your home premises. Anything above it, you can claim the entire kilometers, but they now changed the law to only allow the excess of 10 kilometers. So if the special school is within 10 kilometers from your primary residence, you're not allowed to claim the school transport, but you can claim the other transport service providers such as therapy and those sort of things. The third category is aids and other devices. That's typically your hearing aids, your wheelchairs, special educational toys, and computer software. Category 4 talks about your service providers. Those are, as I mentioned, your therapists, your special needs schools, driver services, doctors, pharmacies, tutoring, all those kind of things that provides a service to your dependent or the taxpayer as a consequence of disability. Category 5, that talks about the insurance, the maintenance, the repairs and supplies of aids and other devices under category 3. For example, when people insure their modified vehicle that excess insurance, they can insure their wheelchair repairs and hearing aids and those sort of things. That insurance premium can then be claimed. Please note that in the new guide now, these things need to be specified to be able to claim them. When I talk about specified, it must be in your insurance policy specified. Then category 6 is modifications of assets. This is typically on a primary residence, for example, both internal and external, for gates and pools and those sort of things to improve accessibility inside and around the house. As I say, very, very specific to improve accessibility. And this section also includes modifications of vehicles, like on your hand controls, for a specific vehicle for a person to conduct their daily living. Category 7 talks about continence products, your nappies, your diapers, catheter, but also special vitamins and supplements if they are duly and properly motivated. Service animals, these are for your guide dogs, all the costs related to the maintenance of such guide dogs. Prosthetics is aids made for missing limbs, etc. As I said now, all these list of qualifying special and much more detail are on that guide from SARS on their website, which you can read through. Then our process is fourfold. Firstly, we offer a free consultation, and the objective for our consultation is to align the SARS guidelines with the disability environment. We need to make sure that what we can claim for that particular environment for that person is legit and it's complete. We then see to what extent we can assist the person. We explain the documentation, which is very important, and that is for each line item of cost we want to claim from SARS, we need to have a proof of a service rendered, which is your invoice, and then also proof of payment from the taxpayer or EFT or a marked bank statement or something. Those go together for each line of cost item you are claiming. Once we were done with that, we will get our client across to us and we will send out a list of required documentation. We will compile the claim schedule, but again, very specific documentation and presentation as we want our submission to be 100% correct as it goes in first time. The third part of our process is that submission to SARS now. We will submit into SARS. We will supply our clients with the results. And there will be regular follow-ups and updates and submissions on audits and completions. Sometimes SARS might ask for additional documents or anything which we will put in those audits for them. The feedback and payout will happen at the last process. We will notify our clients, send them a correspondence regarding the finalization of their submissions and outcomes, and also an update on when possibly the payments would happen. And that's our entire 4-step process. Alright, some of our contact details. Our email address at info@disabilitytax.co.za. That's our email address. Cell phone number 083 636 991. That's my direct cell phone number. And the website of ours are www.disabilitytax.co.za. In closing, I would like to thank anyone that listens to this presentation, and I hope you'll find it um, knowledgeable and you can take up some information on that to conduct your claims. Otherwise, give us a call. Thank you very much.